Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted from my studios in Old Hilliard. This is exciting. I'm talking to someone north of the United States border. So this is really cool. Really quick intro. Elias Dummer co-founded and fronted one of Canada's most acclaimed worship bands, the City Harmonic. As the group's principal songwriter, he helped pen such hits as Holy Wedding Day and Mountaintop, and as well as Manifesto, which served as a theme song for the 2011 National Day of Prayer. The City Harmonic earned 12 GMA Canada Covenant Awards and a Juno Award, which is basically Canada's GRAMMY equivalent, and before they disbanded in 2017. Dummer released his solo debut, The Work, Volume 1 in 2019, and was named Breakthrough Artist of the Year in 2020, Covenant Awards, both as a solo artist and with the City Harmonic. His music has garnered more than 100 million streams to date. Wow. That was a lot. Thanks for sitting through that.
Sorry.
Welcome to Unscripted, my friend. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Elias Dummer, and all of those things someone nice wrote about me. That's
that was so awkward, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hilarious. My wife Megan and I, we've been married almost 20 years now. We have 5 kids, live in Hamilton, spent the last 10 years in Nashville, making music, and have a few businesses, and kind of have a weird little life of mine. And that's, I'm very geeky, and I'm interested in just about every deep end conversation, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So I'm probably a bit much for some people, but I enjoy my life anyway.
I love it. Well, welcome to Unscripted, because I think it's going to be really unscripted. We don't know. We did talk for a few minutes. So Hamilton is, and I just learned this, it's just outside of Toronto-ish. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It's just outside Toronto. So it's kind of like the New Jersey to Toronto, to New York. Like, okay. Toronto doesn't quite want us. And so Hamilton's like the stinky cousin that lives next door, you know,
but you can pop over to Toronto if you need to. It's close enough.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I was in Toronto yesterday. It's really easy. Yeah.
And we had a whole conversation offline very quickly about just the differences between the two. So I guess welcome home, because you are a native of Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my wife and I are both Canadian. All of our kids are Canadian. Our youngest is dual. So we moved back this summer. So it's been 10 years in Nashville, and we are back home. All of our family live in driving distance. All of our parents live in driving distance of Hamilton. So that's been pretty great for the kids too.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's helpful when you have kids, especially, and I'm sure
Big
they
time.
love seeing them.
Yep.
So you have, I read a lot there. You have a brand new album, and I think that's really why we're talking today. You want to talk about the new album first? I mean, we'll go in reverse order. Let's talk about the new album first.
Yeah. So my new record, The Work, Volume 2, has been out for a few weeks now. It is my pride and joy, other than my real pride and joy, which is my family, of course. But right. But no, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I worked with Brent Milligan on it. So Brent Milligan is a producer and musician who's played on everything. He played bass on Jesus Freak, and he was in all kinds of crazy stuff.
Wow.
He produced Colony House and David Crowder Band and Torrin Wells and all kinds of stuff. So this guy's a legend and a good friend of mine. So we started working on the record almost 3 years ago. So it's probably the longest time I've ever worked on any record is this record. I would say it's a record that holds, and I don't know how, as a believer, I don't know how somebody could engage culture as it is right now without, at best, trying to hold frustration and hope in tension.
Okay.
And I think sometimes it feels like in Christian music, there's an expectation that we kind of don't acknowledge the frustration element. Like, hey, there's a lot of things we're doing pretty poorly in public.
Right.
As Christians.
Right.
And so it's like, hey, we should probably, I mean, you read the Psalms, for example, the songbook of the Bible, and you've got you've got David threatening to murder a guy a passage away from,
That's right.
you know, infinite hope. And so you kind of have this contrast that's very, very present in the songbook of the Bible that we've often left out of contemporary song. And so I sort of went at this going, I want this record to feel really bittersweet. I don't want someone to leave it depressed. I want them to leave with a sense of hope, but I don't want it to be a hope disconnected from the reality of what life is like right now. And so we really set out to do that before COVID. That was in 2019 where we first said that. And then it only became more and more and more prescient as time went on. And the songs that we wrote for this record seemed to be even more relevant than we understood when we wrote them. So it's very earnest, very much about my own journey. And it's very much a journey in and of itself as an album from beginning to end, really trying to hold those things in tension.
I love that. Honestly do. Two of my favorite albums. Well, one of them just came out, Toby Mac's newest album, and Toby's fantastic. But you know, I think when you know the story and the pain, to your point, the pain behind the music, and then Stephen Chris Chapman wrote one called "Beauty Will Rise." How many years ago now, when his daughter tragically passed.
Yeah.
"Beauty Will Rise" is my modern day Psalms. Right. Because every song he's wrestling with just life and pain and hurt and questions. And I don't know how many times I've gone back to "Beauty Will Rise" and listened over and over and over again, because what I do love is, to your point too, I think he resolves every song at the end with, "But I'm still going to praise you." You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand this hurts. There's questions I can't answer, but I'm going to praise you. And I think that it sounds like that's what this album is very much like.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, probably there may be moments on this record that are like, there's a song called "The Gospel is Rest," which is probably one of the more popular songs on the record so far. And it is interesting because if you read through the lyrics, I don't really land in a resolved place. It's more of a recognition of need. Yeah. And so I think sometimes we, you know, and it is true, we move from confession to, you know, absolution and all of that. But there is a sense in which, and even in the Psalms, there are sometimes just unfinished prayers. There's unfinished thoughts. And I think that probably rings true in the lives of most Christians. I mean, I think the idea, anyone can relate to the idea that we have hope unfulfilled. In fact, I think there is baked into the Christian story a now but not yet, which is the reality of the Christian life. We have a future hope that is not fully realized. And we just create crazy people when we tell them that they ought to have a hope fully realized all of the time. It just ends up with this real cognitive dissonance that the Bible actually isn't asking us to have. And so I think there's this, to me, I'm quite okay with the idea that we have some prayers that are unanswered. And I think we probably need to help people feel comfortable with that. At the same time, yes, many of the songs do exactly that thing. They go from the recognition of what it is to some form of acceptance and love and gratitude and kind of pointing it towards God, as we all do, including our pain. And so there's several ways in which that kind of plays out on this record. But there are examples where, funny enough, there's actually, I remember in the 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of talk about angry music being really bad for teenagers because angry music meant that they were becoming angry people. And what's fascinating is all the science has gone the other way, which shows that angry music tends to be cathartic for angry people. Really? And that like, you know, elevator music, if you will, tends to enrage angry people. So there's kind of this hilarious misconception about, you know, sometimes part of what music is doing is helping us process. And it's almost like a healthy outlet for certain emotions, or at least a healthy mechanism for certain emotions. And that's of course a give or take. You know, there's nuance to that. I'm sure you can have too much of a good thing, right? But there is a sense in which, like, being able to process through music and prayer, and that's what worship music is. Ultimately, it's prayer. It's prayer that helps us. It's language that helps us speak to God without having to conjure everything up as we go in terms of words. And it allows for a repetitive sense, which plays a huge, in my opinion, and I have all kinds of reasons for this, a huge formative role, a discipleship role. Like worship music is discipling us. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's the question of what it's discipling us like, but it is discipling us. Music forms us. And so there's something to that kind of repetitive process, being able to process emotions in a way that is healthy and good. And I don't know, I'm grateful to be some small part of the corner of music, but that's, oftentimes when I approach a worship record like this one, that's what I'm thinking of in my own life and what I'm trying to help people do.
Have you seen a shift? It feels like there's a shift, for the night. You mentioned the 90s. So you had your Jars of Clay and your DC Talks and your whatever's. And I love me some 90s Christian music. I do. I love me some 90s CCM. But there's been a shift, it seems like. And there's still bands, the Casting Crowns, the Mercy Me's, that are still putting out great music. But it feels like it's not, I don't know what to call that. Let's just still call it contemporary Christian music, but I feel like worship music is now making a rise. I don't know if that's true or not, but
that rise on paper, that rise is well established.
Yes. Is it? Okay.
So they've been dominant Cities, for a long time.
Elevation worship. I mean, it feels like there's a boom happening in the praise and worship side. Is that, you said that on paper, is that true? That's
been the case for over a decade. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. It's overwhelmingly, if you look at the charts, for example, or Christian Airplay, even, it's overwhelmingly worship music, 60-70%. What's interesting, and I'm actually involved in a research project, across 3 different schools, which is bizarre how I ended up involved in this, but, we're actually looking at some of those questions in terms of the role of the relationship between music publishing and worship leaders at the church level and their understanding of these things. It's really going to be fun. Could get me in a lot of trouble, but what's fascinating actually is if you look by association, and this is a little off-putting, mm-hmm. is how small a group that is. So if you look at, if worship music is dominating Christian music, which it is for the most part, and worship music consists of artists and writers associated with basically 4 church movements, in all three of which are in America, 1 in Australia, and those 4 church movements, almost all, like it's like 70%. I don't know the actual number offhand, but a very, very significant percentage of the songs that are sung and measured by CCLI, which is kind of the measuring body for church music. Right. The very significant number of those are all either attached to or directly from these 4 churches. And I don't even know that they all belong to denominations. So there's kind of this very market oriented thing coming from the church, which is we're in a weird moment.
It is,
I think. Yeah.
And then unfortunately, and I think we'll get into this. I think I was going to ask you about a phrase that's very popular right now called deconstructing your faith. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, but and I think it's born out of a few of the churches, probably in those 4 that you mentioned. One of them particularly has gone through quite a bit of storm. There's documentaries now out about these things. And so it's interesting that we have worship music that's been put out by this church that's suddenly under a lot of questions and scandal and problems and documentary. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not here to judge any of that. I'm really not. It's curious that it's almost like a pop artist that fell, that has had a massive, public failure, let's call it. Right. What happens when that's tied to your church?
Yeah, no, totally. It's weird. It gets weird fast. And I mean, what's interesting is that in the case of Hillsong, it's not come from the music side at all. It's all been pastoral leadership. Right. And I remember, I was joking the other day, I remember in the 90s and 2000s, how much hand-wringing all of us worship leaders did about character and morality, just a real fear of the worship leader as a rock star mentality. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, that was healthy, But I think we might have had the magnifying glass pointed in the wrong direction, given what's happening in leadership circles these days.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird moment, honestly. And I don't say that to judge anybody. It's hard to do all of those things, but it is a strange time. I mean, I think as far as deconstruction, it's one of those things where it's a strange conversation, because what deconstruction is in academic circles is simply the examination of the components of an idea. Mm-hmm. On some level, something like deconstruction, and by that I mean, again, not the abandonment of Christian faith, although that is sort of in the zeitgeist in culture, that is kind of how it's used, it's thrown around that way. Right. But in academic circles, deconstruction is discipleship 101. It's saying, what does this mean, and what does it mean to me now, and how should I understand it? So if you're looking at the Bible and trying to discern, say, an idiosyncrasy within your church, or some unusual practice that your church has compared to, say, the Christian church throughout all the years, right? That practice is a deconstructive practice. You're saying this part isn't actually Christian. This part is just Baptist. And I need to know the difference between that which is Baptist and that which is always Christian. Right. And I could still believe the Baptist thing, but I have to know the difference between Christian orthodoxy as a whole, the kind of ecumenical Christian faith that binds us all brothers and sisters together across the world. That is distinct from so many of these idiosyncratic things. And the problem we have in churches is that we're not often raised to go through that process, which forces young people who have access to the internet and can read history easily, right? It forces those people, if our culture isn't saying, hey, if we're not specific, if pastors aren't specific, if our teachers aren't specific, and we say Christianity teaches, and we say things that Christianity doesn't teach, then we force kids into a false binary. We force them to make a choice they don't have to make. Right. Which is between this version of Christianity and abandoning the faith. Right. And that it feels to me like that is in a lot of ways the soup that evangelicalism has been, where it's like, it's all this or nothing. Yeah. When in reality, the Christian faith is 2,000 years old with incredible, beautiful tradition and art and story and understanding. And there's a lot to be gained from that. And that's been my experience for years and years. I mean, the City Harmonic came out of an interdenominational movement, churches from different denominations working together in mission. That's what I knew. Yeah. And so coming into kind of a more stringent environment as we got into the States was a surprise to me. It was new to me. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that kids might grow up in a really, really, really strict environment and then feel like they have no choice but to abandon things if they're going to ask questions at all. Yeah. But it ought not be that way. Right. It ought to be that we are saying, hey, we've all got this beautiful diamond. What is it that's most true of it? What is it within its context? What is it within my own life? What is it within historical study that we can say, oh yeah, this is real and true and good, regardless of culture, regardless of this or that. And that to me is the work of the Christian.
And I think it takes it full circle, because it takes it back to the music that you're writing. Because if we don't, we get lost in the probably the pain and the questions and the difficult prayers that we're asking God, and we don't get to a resolution because we haven't even resolved it within ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
Resolved this faith that we call faith, because at some point it does come down to faith. It comes down to trust, and it comes down to and if we're not solid in that. I had a pastor friend tell me recently, we were having a conversation about this, and he said the problem with deconstructing is the fact that means you're constructing something. And his point was, I think a lot of people are stuck in the deconstruction and they're walking away completely, or they're not constructing something back. They're not putting it all back together, the pieces, as you just said so eloquently. Your words are much better than mine, but I don't think they're putting the pieces back together to form their understanding of this thing we call faith. And I think it's unanchored.
Right. I mean, I think the idea that I mean, the idea of an unanchored deconstruction in general is silly.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all go through life with, and this isn't a criticism of the idea in general. It's just, to me, it seems a fact of philosophy.
Right.
If you're going through life, you are taking something for granted.
Mm.
You're not rebuilding your entire worldview every time you talk.
Right.
And so if that's the case, you're coming at big questions with some presuppositions. Call them, in philosophy, they're called first principles, the irreducible belief, the belief that is behind the belief, behind the belief, behind the belief. And so there's no such thing as deconstructing in a vacuum. And so if you're going to engage in this process on some level, you may have to say, and it may involve some doubt, and I think that's healthy. It may involve some doubt of saying, okay, I'm not sure about this belief I've been told. I'm going to examine it from, I mean, if the Christian gospel is true, then it stands up to scrutiny.
Mm.
And I think we should allow such scrutiny and be the sort of people who, you know, have conversations and do robust work. And I mean, and that's, my faith is strong in part because I was given that room. I was given the room to ask those questions. And there were certain idiosyncrasies that I found wanting, but in general, the story of Jesus, I did not find wanting. And the history of the resurrection, I do not find wanting. And so I think there's a lot to that. That's years and years of life wrapped up in that. But for me, I'm grateful that it started 18 years ago, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of a tricky spot because you've got some people in Christian music, one in particular, I won't name, but who's spoken about the deconstruction topic as if it's like some kind of evil scourge. And I'm left going like, I can't help but feel like he's either knowing what the word really means and choosing to ignore it, and it's just using this word as a rallying cry to or something like that.
Right.
To me, it seems like it seems to exacerbate the problem. Not, and I know this. I don't know this guy personally, but I know him having been around him enough to know he means super well.
Yeah.
But like, to me, that's actually, that approach is what's causing this. Like we're leaving kids feeling like they can't ask bona fide, thoughtful questions without being othered out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a real problem.
Yeah.
So I look at this with a heart for my peers, with a heart for the kids coming up under me. And I mean, I'm not a kid anymore, but and I think, man, the church needs to be a place where we ask and are open to robust, difficult questions, or we will lose to the internet.
Right.
And we're not at war with the internet. You know what I mean?
We're not. And not everything you read on the internet is true.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, not everything that comes from the pulpit is biblical. So you have this kind of tension where we can work it out. We have the resources and the tools and a lot of smart people to work it out, but we need to leave room to work it out.
Hey everyone, my name is Cami Pranel and I'm the Executive Director for My Unscripted. We hope you are enjoying today's interview. My Unscripted is dedicated to helping others find their voice, passion, and follow their dreams. Our team can help create websites, apps, YouTube channels, podcasts, media, and social content. Whatever your passion and vision, we can help. Our good friend Manny Ahome of Samaritan's Feet once said, "Make sure your dreams and goals are big enough to create room for others to join you." We've created room for you to join us too. Find out more at myunscripted.com. Now let's join Aaron for the second half of today's interview.
And look, I mean, I think the book of Job and Psalms, I mean, there's multiple scriptures, but particularly the book of Job, and he had every right, I think, to question, I mean, the guy was going through it. So for him to be able to ask tough questions, and his friends ask tough questions of him and his faith, I think is all very fair. I think that's healthy. Yep. It's in scripture. And so if it's in scripture, it's true. And I think we've gotten away from that because we wanted this touchy feely, comfortable, I don't know. I just think Christianity sometimes, and I think we've done a better job, particularly in worship music, Christian music, maybe album like yours, being okay with saying that, man, this is difficult. I have 5 friends right now going through cancer, 5 different friends. And man, I don't have answers for that, and I can't fix it, and I can't help them. And that's real. Like, that's real life, you know? And that's the kind of faith that I think we have to really wrestle with and ask God those tough questions when we go to prayer. Approach the throne with confidence. I believe it says in Scripture, we should go with confidence, but also we should be confident in our questions, because they're very hard to tie an answer to. But we want this. Right. I don't like Christian movies. Completely different topic.
I feel you. I feel you. Don't worry.
I love the platform. I love what they want to do, and that's no disrespect to
I think they'll get there.
Christian movies. What's that?
I think they'll get there.
I think they will. I just want a more Christian movie sometime that's really real. Like, and there are some. Again, I'm painting with a very broad brush, but I just feel like a lot of times you watch a Christian movie and it's like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it all ties off at the end and everything's perfect and everybody wins. And, you know, and I just sometimes I wrestle with that, because that's not life. And I have friends. Well,
exactly.
I have friends that have gone to their funeral and it didn't end well. You know, it didn't end like we all hoped it would. And the cancer didn't go away, or, you know, you just get on the list. And so I think it is fair to have those conversations, but, I appreciate that. It has nothing to do with your album, or maybe it does have to do with your album.
Well, I mean, a little bit. I mean, I think the reality is that the world that we live in, the Christian space that we're in, is filled with people asking these questions. Yeah. It's not an issue of whether or not they're asking the questions. Right. It's whether or not we are creating a space where they believe they can find answers. So if they believe that they can only find answers elsewhere, they are going elsewhere.
Right. Right.
And so the Christian rock stars yelling about the deconstruction movement of the world are rallying against the people they claim to want to save. So it's just tribalism in practice. It doesn't do anything for the kingdom except yell out a bunch of people who are the people in the gutter, the back of the room. Wow. And so I think I can't fathom Jesus rallying the 45 and telling the 55 to get lost because they're the scourge of the, I don't read that, you know? Right. So I'm sort of in a spot where this album isn't about that per se, but certainly has moments where that's on the table in terms of who are we talking to and what are we talking about? That's very much it. The song Expectation, the opening track, wrestles with that a little bit. There's a song on the record called Kyrie Eleison. It's Mercy We Need. That's just Latin or Greek. So there's this sort of ancient prayer. It just means Lord have mercy on us, basically. And it was a song co-written with Zach Bolen of Citizens. And so it features Citizens. We got together and we didn't know that the podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, was about to come out. But he had been part of Mars Hill. Citizens was part of Mars Hill. He was Zach signed the letter. So there's that. And I had an experience in a much smaller church environment with no media department, no podcast, with a similarly domineering personality. Very, very significant person in my life, to be honest. But, and so Zach and I kind of became friends and we're talking about, that shared experience. And that song somewhat came out of, for me, it was years and years ago. And for Zach, it was 5 years ago. And so that song came out of our sort of reflections on, with the gift of hindsight, looking back. And because obviously there's a little bit of anger and mistrust and all of these things that come out of these. On some level, faith is social. It is a thing. You belong to a church. You're part of a church. You're part of a group of people. And so like when the people involved fail you, it can really rock the boat.
Absolutely.
And so like, I think looking back, part of what we land with is like, yes, we need to be like, I'm reminded of this, the Orthodox prayer, the Jesus prayer. What is it? Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Like, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I think like it's so fundamental to remember that the mercy of God to us, to me, is at the center of the Christian story. And that involves mercy to me. That involves me constantly saying to myself, which is actually the idea, to say that prayer throughout the day, almost like a, if you will, a mantra or some kind of meditative practice. You say that prayer throughout your day. Well, that's also the same attitude with which we approach other people. Because I'm given mercy, they also deserve mercy. Now, does that mean of course there's leadership implications. Of course there's what sort of role do they play? But we don't really get to demonize and outcast people. They can lose their job. They can lose their influence. They can lose their role. But they don't lose their humanity. Wow. And I think there's something in that we're struggling with in our day and age. And that's sort of where that song came to, is like, Lord, have mercy on us. Yeah. Like we don't know what we're doing. We're the thief on the cross. Yes. Telling everybody that we've got it right. And it's a really fascinating moment. So that song, Kyrie Eleison, is really about that, that moment in time, both for Mars Hill and in my own life, and some of the implications of it.
It's fascinating because that podcast, I was a fan of Mars Hill early, in the early days. And particularly Mark. I think Mark came in so hot into the Christianity, and he was different, he was edgy, and he was raw, and all those kind of things. But I do know that podcast, I've shared it. It has been, I've talked to friends that listen to it, and many of them it's triggering. I had more than one tell me I couldn't get past like episode 1 or 2, because it's like 6 or 8 or however many episodes it is. Yeah. And like, I can't do it. I just can't do it, because it's not necessarily Mars Hill. It's the church that they were a part of, or a church that they were on staff in, or leadership team that they were a part of. It's very triggering for people. And that's unfortunate that we have those stories, but we're human. And I thought that was a very powerful podcast. So it's amazing you wrote a song out of that. It's incredible.
Yeah, we had no idea it was coming. And then the podcast came out like a month after we wrote it. And we were like, oh, okay. Right. Well, I guess we struck a nerve here. So that's it's been interesting hearing people's stories as they've heard the song. And it's probably the least congregational song on the record. It kind of hits hard and is very kind of grimy and has a really heavy beat to it. And love it. So, and what's cool about it actually is because we were still not in the middle of lockdown, but lockdown was still a factor. Yeah. When we produced that song. So we ended up doing this crowdsourced choir. And so we had people, the whole traditional choir you hear singing the Kyrie, is made up of people uploading their own recording that they did in their own house from around the world. Wow. So it's and then we kind of did a composition of that, and they did all their harmonies, and we edited it all together. And so the whole chorus is this crowdsourced thing. So there's some symbolism to that for me, being really nerdy, that I love. I love that we have the global church essentially singing Christ have mercy on us while we wrestle with the implications of our own mistakes.
That's so cool. I mean, that is so cool that it is that larger story behind it, behind the music, I guess you'd say. So
yeah.
How do you write a song? Like, I've asked this to a few artists that I've talked to. Is it you're sitting on a bus or a plane or at the park or with your kids, or, is it, how do you write a song, and when did you become a songwriter?
Oh man. So I started writing music when I was like 10. Wow. I might have even actually started writing like joke songs. Like a friend and I remember this time in 4th grade. I don't know. How old are you in 4th grade? Anyway, but in 4th grade on a lunch hour, it was too hot. And so my friend and I took a tape recorder into like a room beside the playground. And we like made joke songs like Weird Al Yankovic style. And we did that. And then that continued. Like I was in bands all through middle school and high school. And so I've never not, like, as far back as I can remember, I've written songs. I don't know why I thought to do that. I don't remember the moment where I realized I could, but I always did. My process is there's this great moment in a documentary about the Elton John record, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And he talks about how Bernie Taupin would write lyrics and then mail those lyrics in to the studio where they were going to be recording that record. So that record was made like 3 weeks or something like that. And so in the morning, Elton would walk in and open the mail and find the lyrics essentially complete or something like that. And then he would go, and the guitar player was saying that while he was putting cream cheese on his bagel, Elton would take the lyrics to the piano and just bang out the song.
Wow.
And then they'd record it by lunch.
Wow.
And so
what a gift.
Right. Seriously. But I took from that there's some magic. Technically it's called prosody, some magic between the connection between the emotion of a lyric and the music that is hard to do when you put all the pressure on doing both now.
Yeah. Wow.
So if you're like, I have to sit down and write the music and write the lyric, you're often problem solving more than you're making magic. In other words, you're going like, I need a rhyme. Here's a rhyme. And so you end up with what is sometimes not a great, you end up creating cognitive dissonance between the lyrical quality, the emotional quality within a lyric and the music itself. And Christian music is often very guilty of this, where we have very peppy sounding things, we make sad things sound happy. And that's jarring, I think, for people. So what I tend to do instead is I will sit down most mornings. We just got a grand piano back in our house finally after the move. I've been without a piano for several months, and it's been my soul has shriveled up to a tiny rock.
You're playing a Casio or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing at all. It's been horrible. But the what I would normally do is have breakfast and then take my coffee and go sit at the piano, and I would play, and I would just record as a voice memo on my phone whatever it is I'm playing, and I'll usually settle into some kind of melody, and often separate of that entirely. Sometimes that'll turn into me recording something, or I'll sing a little thing, but I'm like singing gibberish. I'm like, you know, and I'll sing any words which sound good together just to see, does this sound like something singable? And I'll put that away. That idea, I don't put any pressure on it that day for me to turn around and turn that thing into a song. And I'll have a separate notepad of lyrical ideas and prompts, which might become a song. And every once in a while, I'll sit down and I'll look through my prompts and I'll listen through my voice memos. I'm like, oh, this really feels like this. The emotion of this music is the emotion of this lyric. And then I'll write it. And I've got a starting point on both. I've got a head start on both. So it's a little bit like a factory in that, like, I'm always doing both things, but I don't put that much pressure on myself to finish everything that comes through. It's like I have a documenting system, and I use that documenting system to great effect.
Wow. Most of that was way over my head. that was incredible. I've always been fascinated by it because, you know, and that's true for anything. Some people, like, they can look at a car engine and go, oh yeah, it's this, and they know how to do it. And then, you know, I think we all, and again, I think we're all given those gifts. There's a reason why, like, you're really good at this. There's a reason I'm not. And because it's, you know, I don't have a voice or any of those things, but I've just always been fascinated with the songwriting because I love music. I just absolutely love music. And I think, like, if you tell me pick a moment, pick a place, I can tell you the song that was playing or the song that was in my mind. And it's just the soundtrack of my life. So now when I hear those songs, I go back to where I was mentally that day, that time, that moment, physically too, and even things like, so anyway, very interesting. I'm fascinated by all of it. So you have a gift, my friend. Well, thank you. You know, it's funny. Have you heard, one of the things about that musical, you were talking about how music cements memories for you, right? Absolutely. It's one of the reasons that I do what I do. In neuroscience, they've started to look at how we understand memory.
And so one of the crazy things that we've learned is that we tend to think in our society about memory wrongly. We think about memory in terms of time. Like you would think, oh, February 5th, or you would think, oh, January 10th or at 11 o'clock, right?
Right.
But your brain doesn't work like a computer in the way that it organizes information. It organizes information in a divided way, and those divisions tend to align with your senses. So when you remember something, you're not remembering 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Your brain is reconstructing, weirdly enough, the event of what it is based on the stimuli and the senses involved.
Wow.
So if there's a smell, if there's music playing, these all help the brain to more accurately build memories.
Amazing.
So it's a shortcut to more concrete, or at least more vivid memory. And so that's part of why I think things like music and even smells and sounds and all of it, and touch, why these things matter so much in the faith, why communion isn't a vague idea, but a meal, because there's something tangible, something intangibility that cements memory in a way that abstract concepts simply don't on their own. So we connect these things by rebuilding them. We rebuild them by the senses. So music, communion, these touchy-feely practices actually end up fundamental to the human experience if we're going to remember anything at all.
Wow. So I have to, and you've given so much time. I feel like we have to do these again, because there's so much I'm learning in this, and we could probably do multiple
I'm having
episodes.
A lot of fun.
This is fascinating. It really is. And I hope everybody listening enjoys it as well. I think they will, because it's very deep. It's very, very deep.
Thank you.
You found that your study of the brain and science and music and all these things, excuse me, I'm sorry. I have to think that has that not solidified your faith? In the fact
it has.
This doesn't just happen. Like there had to be.
No, these things don't just happen.
Design.
That's right. Yes, exactly. It does. And I think I'm saddened and hopeful at the same time. Saddened in that, like, so many people are taught to believe that science is somehow in opposition to their faith. Mm-hmm. And my experience has been the opposite. The more I learn about the world and the more science is uncovering, the more it's like, oh, wow, that makes perfect sense. Like, and often too, that Christian tradition and human tradition is often wiser than we've given it credit.
Right.
So we can end up with a pretty strange understanding of what humans are like. And then we find, as science continues to unpack and all that, because science is a moving target, right? Mm-hmm. So as science continues to unpack, we see, oh, shoot, maybe years and years and years and years of practice, even if they didn't know why, produced something that was more aware of what humans are actually like than we often are.
Right.
And I think that's a really, really, that's been profound in my own life. And I think it motivates me in every time I sit down at the piano or the guitar or anything to say, hey, how is this going to shape somebody's tomorrow? You know?
Wow. I love that question. That's a great question. That's a great way to approach music, because it will shape somebody's tomorrow. Somebody's going to hear your album. It may very well be me. and it's going to lead, like I said, all the way back to Stephen Chris Chapman's album. That is my go-to. I keep it on, I keep it on close because, there's times where I just have to go and find that. So I have a feeling I'm going to very much tie in with yours as well.
Oh man. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you think.
Oh, dude, you're incredibly gifted and talented and wise. And
thank you. You're being kind, but I appreciate it.
No, I'm being honest. I'm being very, very honest. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows that I'm well outclassed in the mental capacity. I think I don't even know the words. I can't even think of a word because I'm not that bright. So, all right, let's talk about where people can find you.
Yes.
But you also have other albums as well. So where can they find
you? I do. Yeah. You can find, if you look up Elias Dummer, that's Elias Dummer. You'll find me on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. That's also my handle on Instagram and TikTok. I really enjoy the video side of that. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm really enjoying the kind of dialogue side of that and the kind of, so I do a lot of videos on there talking about this stuff. So
Wow.
I'm in all of those places. And if you're looking for my old band, you'll find a bunch of records by the City Harmonic. And so that's all me, all of that.
That's
So that goes all the way back a bunch of years now, but, yeah, so you can find me all those places, but eliasdummer.com is a good start, and search my name. You'll find it. There's only one of me because it's a very weird name.
Kind of a central hub is your website. Is that the best place?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And then they will find you on all the socials and all those things. Man, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Good luck on the new album. Anybody listening, please go download it. Let's give it a listen. What helps you the most? I'm sorry, one last question. What helps you the most as an artist? Because I know it's changed so much. I saw Matt Damon talking. I don't know if you saw that clip about he's talking about movies and why he feels like movies aren't as good as they used to be. And it all tied back to the fact that they used to come out on DVD and they got a lot of royalties back and a lot more of the money recouped. And now he was talking about how it goes streaming and they're not getting that same money. So now they're not putting that money back into the film because they're walking away broke.
I mean, I
essentially
think
what he was saying. Is that the same in music?
So I'm an independent artist now. We were in the label system for years. We finished our deal happily. All parties were happy. And now I have like a distribution deal with my label. So I'm indie. I've been indie as a solo artist. And to be perfectly honest, I think the streaming model is better.
Good. Okay. Perfect.
So the challenge is that the business model of the record labels has not caught up in many cases.
Right.
So where really you have one or two artists at the top of the heap who are able to say that they make money at it. And then the shared portion, if you will, of it is hard to divvy up between artist and label. So that side of it stinks. But as an indie artist, no, I have residual income that's there every time someone listens. That's awesome. That was not true. Once upon a time, I made $10. That was it. And of that $10, I kept $4. Jeez. So when someone bought a record, I kept $4. That was it. Wow. Right. And that's even the record that I sell at the show. Someone goes to the store and buys one. I make, $2.10 or something in publishing. And then maybe if we're lucky, $1.50 in royalties. So that's the old model. Yeah. So someone buys a record and I make $2. Well, now somebody listens to a record their entire life. And they listen, if it becomes part of their everyday life, like you were talking about with that Stephen Curtis Chapman record, I might be getting a small amount, but that small amount adds up.
Right.
And you multiply that across millions. And it's like, I've got money that comes in, a small amount, but enough that it's like, it doesn't not matter, every month. And that money coming in every month is great. And great in that, like, not as in it's paying our mortgage, but great as in like, I'm getting every single month I have income from this. So my take is that, like, I actually think that the business model is shifting, and it's not the model that's broken. It's the fact that we haven't quite caught up.
Wow. Interesting. Incredibly interesting. So the best way for people to support you is to go stream your album. Go stream the album. And if you want it, and one thing I'll say, and it might get me in trouble, like, Spotify is amazing. Just between you and I here and this red dot. Seriously, my wife is going to listen.
Yeah. So Spotify is really, really great for helping people discover new artists. Yeah. But in terms of like how artists get paid, there's quite a big variance between platforms. So Apple Music pays a lot more than Spotify, but reaches a lot fewer people. Amazon Music pays way, way more than all of them and reaches an even smaller group. So if you're like, I listen to 4 artists and I want them to make as much money as they can from it, then do that on Amazon. But you're gonna find all kinds of new artists and be connected to new people on Spotify. So it's just each one has a slightly different take.
I love it, man. This has been so informative. Thank you for your time. I hope it's been worth your time.
So fun,
learned
man.
So much, man. This has been unbelievable. So we will have to do this again. And
anytime.
Always have a forum with us for sure. Man, thank you. The album again is called
The Work Volume 2.
Okay. And there's a Work Volume 1 as well.
There is. Yes.
Okay.
That was, So
The Work Volume 2, go stream it today. Support Elias. Thank you so much, man. This has been really awesome.
Thanks, Aaron. Lots and lots of fun.
All right. Good luck to you. We'll talk to you soon. If I'm ever in Toronto, I'll shout at you so you can come over and meet us.
Yeah, that'd be good fun. Is this like your day job, so to speak? Is this the main thing that you're doing? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we have a business that is tied. Thank you for asking that question. We have a business tied to this. This is the little engine that kind of does some things for us, but we have an entire business wrapped around it that does a lot more for everybody.
Awesome.
Like, this is my fun part of my job.
Yeah,
I
awesome.
Love this, so
congrats, man. That's really great.
Man. Yeah, thank you very much. This has been really fun.
Awesome. Yeah, you too.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted Podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad. Be sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.